If you are like me, you have probably struggled at some point to get your guitar tone to sit correctly in your mix. So today I'm going to show you all of the tricks that I've learned over the years of mixing to get a good killer metal guitar tone and to get it to sit right in your mix. What's up everybody, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Taylor, and today I want to show you guys how I go about getting my guitar tones to sit in the mix correctly. A lot of you have asked me for more tutorial type content, so that's what we're going to be doing today. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, definitely just let me know down in the comments and I will get to making those videos. I have a session opened up in Reaper, and this is a song that I've been working on that will either have released by the time you see this video or is releasing very soon. One of the two. Let's listen to what I have going on here. So like you can hear, there's a very 90s death metal vibe going on with this song. That's kind of what I was going for. Now this might seem like a fairly obvious thing, but the first thing that you need to do when getting a good guitar tone in your mixes is picking out a good guitar tone to begin with. And for this video, we're going to be using 𝗚𝗡. 𝗚𝗡 is a free open source plugin that you can use to load profiles that people have made of their amplifiers. And that brings us to today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Loudstak. Loudstak has just released a new pack of 𝗚𝗡 profiles and IRs in collaboration with Geert-Jan of the band 𝗦𝗡 and formerly of the band Entombed. All of these 𝗚𝗡 profiles were recorded by Howell at Satanic Audio, who's done work with Behemoth and many others. So I feel like with the vibe of this song being a 90s death metal song, that this just makes a lot of sense to use this 𝗚𝗡 profile pack in this song. Now, if you're surprised that I'm using Neural Amp Modeler, I actually made a video about this a while back on the channel, and my main issue with it at the time that I made the video was it was just really difficult to find profiles for it. Right around the time that I made that video, they actually created like a search and an indexing function for 𝗚𝗡, which really helped you find tones. But when I made the video, they didn't have that. So that was kind of my main issue with it at the time. But what I think is really cool about this is it takes some of the guesswork out. Like you don't have to go through a bunch of different profiles and listen back only to find out that like it wasn't captured super professionally and it doesn't sound very good. Let's just start off at the beginning. This is Death and Roll. So pretty heavy on the HM2 there. And there is a lot of HM2 stuff in this pack. So if you use 𝗚𝗡 and you like that early 90s HM2 sort of sound, this is a really good place to start. Diablo Thrash 98. I wonder what this is. This might be like a Randall Diablo maybe? I like that one. That one's a good one. These are the ones that I found I vibed with the most, are just the 𝗦𝗡 rhythm. This one has a little bit more mids. This one's a little bit more scoop, but a little bit more aggressive in the top end. This one sounds really interesting. This could make for like a really cool guitar break or something like that. We'll have to keep this in mind for future. Pannekin one's really good too. 𝗦𝗡. So 𝗦𝗡 features Dave Ellison, formerly of Megadeth, and I wonder if that's like where this name came from. Maybe I'm just being a conspiracy theorist? Who knows? More HM2 stuff. Oh My Brutal. Oh My Brutal is really cool because it sounds like a blended in HM2. Like it still has some really aggressive top end, but it's not quite as fuzzy as like a full-on HM2 tone. Let's go to the Stockholm Clean. So there are some clean tones in this 𝗚𝗡 pack. We have Stockholm Clean, which is clean. Stockholm Cleaner. It's nice that these clean tones are in here. I personally don't need those for this song, but it is good to have a few clean tones in there. You never know when they will come in handy. Really good like crunch sort of sound. Swamp Crystal. That almost sounds like just a really sparkly sort of clean sound. Let's go to Swedish Death. Full on HM2 glory. If you are looking for that, there it is. Even more aggressive HM2. And last one, Wolverine. I'm assuming this is like an Entombed 80 Wolverine blues sort of sound. There it is right there. So I'm gonna go with this 𝗦𝗡 rhythm. Just this first one I think is a really good balanced tone. And like you can see, I have the treble bumped here just a hair. just to give it a little bit more aggression in the top end. That will become important later on, but that just is like me dialing it in by ear. There's nothing special going on there. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to pick out a cabinet, and this is going to be a really important part of the tone. And I would argue that this is even more important than picking out your preamp sound. So you could do this first if you wanted, or if you have like a go-to IR, one that you know that you really like, maybe just starting there and then going back to your amplifier and dialing it in a little bit. But I have a good bass preamp sound. Let's do the cabinet and then we'll go back and fine tune if we need to. This is GB Mars, so this is gonna be a Marshall Greenback. I like that the IRs are like relatively straightforward in their naming conventions. I don't have to guess what these things are. And we can always just use these left and right buttons. I don't need to use the drop-down menu just to quickly go through and compare. Okay, so I closed my eyes there just to go through and see if I could pick one just by sound without using my eyeballs, and it's weird that I landed on this Tangerine SE Edge. It could be, okay, let's listen to it in the context of our mix. It could be a little bit mid-heavy. It sounds a little bit mid-heavy soloed, but I'm not going to adjust any EQ or anything right now. I want to do that while I'm listening to my full mix, and I'll explain that here in just a second. Let's just take this and drag this onto the other guitar track, so that way we have the same plug-in on both the left and right guitars. And if we adjust this, we'll actually go back and sort of do the same thing here in a second, but let's just listen to this. The only thing I'm going to keep on my master bus right now is this SSL compressor. And this is about where I have it set. All this is doing is sort of like keeping things contained in the mix. And then the other thing that I have is I have this stealth limiter, and this is just giving us the volume we need. I don't want anything coloring my mix right now, especially while I'm dialing in these tones. So let's go ahead and listen to this. These guitars are sounding a bit dark to me. I'm gonna go ahead and mute one of them, and I am going to open up NAMM again. I'm just gonna center this for now. Let's actually go through that same process again, but let's do it in the context of a mix this time. And I think you'll see why I didn't want to EQ anything in solo. Okay, so I liked the sound of the orange cab on its own, but now that I'm listening to it in the mix, I actually like this Recto D112 IR. I think it sounds good. Okay, let's throw this back on the left side. Let's unmute the right guitar track. And I did just delete and drag the plugin in, so that way we're using the same settings on both the left and right guitars. This is what it sounds like. And I'm actually happy with this sound. Now, in full disclosure, I did sort of go through these prior to recording this video, so I know that I'm vibing with the dieth preset. But if you got this far and you got your IR in and you kind of wanted to go back and tweak, you could go back through here, you know, go through the different preamps again. And maybe you find one that you vibe with a little bit more, but let's go back here. We're gonna go left and right, and now we're gonna get into some of the fun stuff with the mixing. So thanks to the new Guillermo Miranda NAMM pack from Loudstack, I was able to get a guitar tone that I'm happy with in the song, and let's listen back to it. Another thing that you're going to notice with your guitar tones, especially if they're sounding too thin, is that there is a symbiotic relationship with the guitar and the bass tone. The bass tone should really thicken up the guitar tone in a lot of ways. So we're going to listen to the bass track here. And when I do my bass tone, I actually split it low and high. I like to bandpass the high end, and I'm not gonna go in great detail on the bass tone in this video. We could do that in a future video, but just for some context here, when I mix my bass, I like to mix the high end and the low end separately. So that's why you see these two separate tracks here. And what I'm doing with the high end right now is I'm just listening to it and trying to get it balanced with the guitar. Okay, I feel like the bass is kind of filling in the low end of the guitar now, and it's really like thickening things up. But the guitars are sounding a little bit dull, right? Like, and you will find this a lot of times. It doesn't matter if you're using an amp sim, if you're using recorded live guitars or whatever. When you get to the mixing phase, a lot of times the guitars, in comparison to other commercial mixes, they sound a little bit dull right off the bat. And there's a good reason for that. Usually when you go in and you're mixing guitars, you're not done when you just throw an amp sim on the guitars here. So what I like to use personally to EQ my guitars is I like using this SSL console. This plugin is running in stereo and it's on my guitar bus, so everything we do here will apply to both the left and right guitars. I've always liked every variation I've tried of this plugin, and I was watching a video from Hardcore Mix Studio. Shout out to Jordan from Hardcore Mix Studio. I was watching a video with him and he uses this all the time too, and one of the things he was saying is he likes using this as opposed to EQs with like graphics on them, because a lot of times the graphics can distract you and force you to mix with your eyes rather than just listening and mixing with your ears, because sometimes you'll make decisions, especially with a plugin like this, where they seem really dramatic, especially if you were using a graph and you were really like boosting a frequency. It seems like, whoa, this is really excessive, I'm doing something wrong. But when you use a plugin like this, it just forces you to listen to what you're doing, just make decisions based off your ears. So I really agree with that sentiment. That's why I like using a plugin like this. Now I'm using Reaper, and whatever DAW you are using, doesn't matter. For sure, it's got a built-in EQ. You can do these same moves on that built-in EQ, but that's why I like using this one. Just a personal preference. So let's listen to this. We're gonna brighten this up quite a bit. I mean, you can hear how much more those guitars came forward, and a 9+ decibel boost in the high end of a guitar might seem like super dramatic, but when you're listening to the plugin, it actually sounds right, you know? Now I'm gonna use a filter in the top end to sort of cut out. With NAMM, we don't really have this so much, but with a lot of amp sim plugins, you will get like some weird artifacting in the top end, some like hiss and fizz and things that shouldn't be there. I'm just gonna go ahead and use this filter to cut that stuff out anyways, but NAMM doesn't have a dramatic amount of it, so it's not super necessary. Another thing that's kind of cool is if you look at this filter, I am cutting around 7 kilohertz. And if you look at this bump over here, this bump is happening at 8 kilohertz. So kind of a weird crossover thing that's happening there, but I think it's kind of cool. I think what it does to the guitar tone is really neat. Now, the guitars are not sitting exactly where I want them to in a mix, and with this SSL EQ, I find that it's like really easy to dial in just with like the default settings. You know, mostly I just turn things up and down, but sometimes I will have to dial in things a little bit more here. So I'm gonna adjust the low mid frequency here. And I'm gonna do it pretty dramatically, and then I'm gonna sweep. And that's about where I want those guitars to sit, is at that 9.3. And I like the way those guitars are sounding now. Let's listen to A, B. We can back off the EQ just a little bit. It's a little bit extreme. Okay, I'm gonna insert one more plugin here and I'm going to make a cut with this plugin. Again, you could do this in your DAW's stock EQ plugin, but there's something that's kind of unique about this plugin, which is why I'm going to use it. This is Joey Sturgis EQ. I like this plugin a lot. Now, if you need something that's free that you could do the same thing with, there is a plugin called Nova EQ. I'm actually using it on the bass right now. Looks like this. Nova Parallel Dynamic Equalizer. You can do the same thing with Nova, but I'm just using this one because I kind of like it. So let's listen to the guitar tone. There's like this wah, wah, wah frequency that I'm not, it's almost like a cocked wah sort of sound. It's like right in there. And I just want to cut this. Like I'm not going to do anything crazy here, but maybe like a 2 dB cut. Yeah, it's hardly even noticeable, but that's a good thing. Okay, now the other thing that I want to use the JST plugin to do, a lot of the time with guitars, you will find a lot of buildup in the low end, especially when you're doing like chuggy stuff. With this style of music, it's very, very common, but like this riff right here. You know, there's like some buildup in the low end there. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can deal with it, but I like just throwing some compression on the low end. Really fast attack and release. And basically just setting the threshold so it's only when that buildup happens with the chunky dun, dun, dun on the guitar that the compression's even kicking in, and it's very subtle. You know, like let's do like 2.5 decibels of gain reduction. And you can see it kicking on right there with those chugs, so. Okay, so we have a guitar tone that I think is doing much better of representing the song and sitting in a mix the way that I want it to. Another thing that I'm doing here with the guitar that I should probably mention is I have the guitars going to this premix bus, and this premix bus has the bass and the guitars. I wouldn't put the vocals in the premix bus, but it does have the bass and the guitars, and this is a really common practice, but I'm just using this compressor. I'm sidechaining it off the snare, and it has a fast attack and release, and it's just basically pushing down on that premix every time the snare hits to help the snare cut through the mix a little bit better. It's barely noticeable, but it does help the snare sit in the mix much better. Now, the way that I like to mix a lot of times, sometimes I will do top-down mixing, sometimes I will mix from the bottom up. The differences between those two, this is a very nuanced topic that we could go pretty deep on, but essentially what top-down mixing is when you put a bunch of effects on your master bus and then you mix into that master bus with those effects already active, and then, you know, bottom-up mixing or whatever you want to call it. So the way that I'm mixing right now, I only have the SSL compressor, I only have the limiter, and I'm going to turn on some other things on my master bus. Now, the mix overall does sound a little bit dull, but some of the things that I use on my master bus are going to change that quite a bit. So let's turn on Gullfoss. Gullfoss is an intelligent EQ. It's constantly just correcting your mix, and you can see how I have it set here. It's going crazy even though there's nothing playing. And then I also used tape saturation. This is going to add some high end into the mix. And there's another plugin that I use here that I'm not going to engage, this TR51. And what this does is add in like a lot of distortion and compression and different console emulation when I'm like really going for that final mixing portion. But let's just add those two other plugins in right now and listen to this. Okay, so I think those guitars sound great. They sound mean, they sound aggressive, they sound pissed off. Everything you could want in this style of music. Again, this is a 90s death metal style song, so I think that it really fits. It really fits with what's going on here. Big shout out to Loudstack for sponsoring this video and giving me some really good 90s death metal inspired tones for this mix. It really helped out, really helped get the vibe going right. If you want to check out Loudstack and the 𝗬𝗓𝗦𝗏 NAMM pack, I will link that down in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit the like button. If you like what I do here on the channel, consider subscribing or joining my Patreon. There's more information on that in the description, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.